Hello, I am Dionysus. In this documentary, I'll try to be your guide through this journey. Mind, the most complex structure in the universe, and perhaps still the least understood, even by itself. This film will tell the story of knowledge's evolution as a journey through time. Together with Hermes, we will explore knowledge and the forms it has transformed into, step by step. For humanity must strive not only to understand nature, but also its own mind. The age of Hermes is the story of that search. Human. From the very first moment it set foot on this earth, it was thrust into nature's most ruthless, most dangerous game. No mighty claws, no razor-sharp jaws. Its sense of smell was dull. Its eyes blind to the darkness, skin thin as paper, bones brittle as dry twigs, legs too slow to outrun the hunters. And yet, in this unfair struggle, it endured with something else, its mind. The story of Hermes is no war against nature. It is the story of something born from fragility itself, the evolution of constructive code knowledge. But not all knowledge is a blessing. For when knowledge touches the mind, it collides with the mind's inner codes. And if those codes are flawed, knowledge does not destroy ignorance, it breeds it. Today, we will call this an information virus. Distorted codes seep into the mind, and man does not become free the moment he begins to think. If guided by falsehood, he becomes a prisoner, a mental hostage, bound by chains far more intricate than before. Stripped of his own power to analyze and unable to create new, healthy thoughts, he turns into a cognitive automaton, mechanically obeying commands fed to him from the outside. Destructive code knowledge, information viruses. The most primitive instincts we inherited from our animal ancestors: dominate, fight, lead the pack, defend your territory, destroy the weak. Over the centuries, these chaos-laden codes were etched deep into the human mind, forming the first rules of survival. But these codes awaken a program that leads only to chaos and destruction: obedience. This code turns people into automatons who act against their own values, driven solely by authority and the pursuit of power. It makes the individual a partner in collective ruin. It paralyzes ethics and judgment. Under the guidance of an authority figure, people can be brought to willingly commit acts that only moments earlier they would have condemned as morally wrong. Why is it so important to understand these ancient codes? Because at the root of humanity's current existential crisis lie the deeply buried, age-old cognitive codes: cruelty, selfishness, the blind desire to dominate, traits that once ensured our survival during evolution, but now bring only destruction. These codes are the greatest barrier to human liberation and to the evolution toward a higher state of consciousness. As Nietzsche wrote in 1883, man is a rope stretched between the animal and the overman. Yet the modern human, instead of balancing on that rope, tends to fall back into the dark, primitive programs of the past. To understand the nature of these viruses is the first condition for moving toward the overman. Without it, humanity will remain trapped, repeating the same primitive cycle: chaos, conflict, and destruction. We must return to that first moment, that first spark, where it all began. Now we return to that very first moment when everything began, to our first ancestor who was born different from all the others. His name was Hermes. Hermes, a mysterious figure of prehistoric times, perhaps humanity's very first philosopher. He was different from the others, but what set him apart was not merely his physical frailty. It was a rare and extraordinary mind, one that could perceive the world around him with unmatched depth. His brain was so powerful that it consumed energy constantly, and his body struggled to keep up. This made him the most fragile, the most vulnerable member of his tribe. In the tribe, the hierarchy was brutally simple. The strongest eats first. In this world, muscle was everything. The first to reach the food were the leaders of the pack, the powerful warriors. Those like Hermes, physically weak, were left for last. But no one realized that standing outside this system, Hermes saw something the others could not. He perceived the order of the world, the workings of nature, the dangers, and the opportunities from a completely different vantage point. Hunger had weakened his body, but it had strengthened his mind. Hermes had no choice. He had to use his brain. To survive, he needed to devise new strategies. Strategies that could supply the energy his powerful mind demanded. The longer he remained a silent observer in the wild world around him, the more new questions began to take shape in his mind. Was strength limited only to muscle? Or was there another way? Hermes stayed away from the power struggles within his tribe. His body was frail. Even the smallest conflict could have ended him. But the real reason was not merely his physical weakness. It was the way he perceived the world. He noticed the small details others ignored, and sensed every danger, every opportunity around him with a deep and uncommon sensitivity. In his world, food meant life, and Hermes knew well that even the smallest creatures could be precious for survival. But survival alone was not enough. He had to find his place within the tribe, to have his existence acknowledged, and to ensure the continuation of his bloodline. If he could not prove himself, his lineage would end. The others saw the same events, but none examined them with a curious eye. None had noticed nature's silent lesson, and most importantly, none had asked the simple yet world-changing magical question. But Hermes whispered, perhaps for the first time in all of human history, with full awareness, "Why?" He had discovered the secret, why predators could not approach the porcupine, why birds built their nests among thorny branches. For Hermes this was not a miracle, it was the triumph of intellect. He carefully chose the branches, sharpening them with precision, and then he built for himself a portable, thorn-covered shield, a shelter and a weapon in one. With this armor, he could now enter places where no one had ever dared to go before. When Hermes returned to his tribe with his prey, every eye turned to him in astonishment. They had never seen anything like it before, the weakest, bringing back the largest catch. Among the hunger-stricken, quarrelsome early humans, there was, for the first time, a true silence. And in that silence, they began to think. When Hermes carried the deer he had hunted with his intellect, everything changed. The starving members of the tribe abandoned their quarrels and gathered around him. For the first time, the most precious thing of that age, food, was being brought in abundance. An idea had proven greater than brute force. Others began to imitate his methods. Hunting techniques improved, shelters became safer, and life was never quite the same again. That moment was one of the greatest turning points in human history. The prey Hermes had captured with his intellect did more than feed his tribe. It opened their minds. This was the greatest rupture in humanity's evolution. A new era had begun for the human species. The first age of Hermes. The age of intellect, observation, and inquiry. Hermes's triumph was the triumph of a constructive code in his mind, the power of a single question. Why? That question became a chain of commands. Observe, think, invent, share. And it opened a new door in the human mind. Behind that door lay civilization itself. And then something else happened. Something unexpected. People's bellies were now full. Their minds no longer had to work under the constant pressure of survival. This new space created room for the next leap in human evolution. The birth of social bonds, of communication, and of art. For the first time, primitive as it was, humanity had found a way to express itself. But the coin had a darker side. The ancient primal viruses we once learned for survival remained hidden deep within our minds. The different is dangerous. Cast it out. Reject the new, cling to the old. Do not question, only obey. These destructive codes hid in the shadows of the mind, passed down from generation to generation. As the descendants of Hermes multiplied, resources grew scarce and war became inevitable. To survive, mankind learned to be even more ruthless. These lessons of violence and fear were etched into the human mind like a deep and lasting virus. The first age of Hermes was not only a time of great mental revolution for humanity, it was also the birth of the dark instincts we still wrestle with today. To understand his story is to understand the conflict within ourselves, to understand our own nature, because even after thousands of years, at the heart of our technology-filled modern world, we are still chasing the same question Hermes first asked: why? Hermes's legacy is not only about discovery, it is a reminder that we must face the darkness within and transform it